What's up? So I got a request from Vin Dow to do OCO Oroco Resource Corp. And this is a copper miner in Canada, and their main mine is they just gained full control of the St. Thomas mine or Santo Thomas mine in Mexico. And so this is a wild stock that's been swinging between 75 cents and zero. So they've had a couple brushes with zero here, and recently they had some big moves up. And I want to get in here. Let's talk about copper a little bit in general, and commodities and the cycles, and look at what this has been doing in this cycle. And yeah, let's get into it. This is Brian Lewis with MMT Investing. Things just changed. So here's our crash. So the S&P, we got an A, B, C wave down, which this looks like it did. And then we got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up. And so this is looking a whole lot like a lot of the commodities and a lot of the airline charts, where we get the general wave down and the bounce up completely fails. And we get this just kind of blah, flat bottom kind of for the 5 wave. Which is not particularly interesting, but this is very interesting. This last little bit of volatility that we've had, this thing has just shot up and hit this weird wall here. And I mean, I don't know. I was reading news about them and trying to figure out what's going on. But they acquired in March full control over the Santo Thomas mines, and this is wild behavior, way out of scope for this chart. And this is a small stock, so huge swings, and mining is, of course, very complicated sector. I just wanted to talk about copper, I guess. A couple of the main things to mention for copper is one, China is one of the biggest buyers of copper in the world, and they're still shut down, and they should be rebounding over this year. They should be one of the first companies to rebound out of this crisis. But if you saw my video on like the IMF's projection for the world GDP over the course of this entire year, it's showing China and India coming out positive by the end of this year, but barely. And a huge contrast to like the financial crisis or something like that, where China and India and the Asian countries just like rocketed out of the financial crisis. This looks like the Asian countries are going to be like just slightly below even on GDP, and China and India slightly above. So that's not a really good outlook for copper over the whole course of this year. And this chart down here is what you would expect for a company that just is not doing well in this cycle. And so the fundamentals I don't like, short term or long term, on copper, and the mining sector is really complicated and more risky than just buying the resources themselves. And so Oroco, I looked at their balance sheet. Oroco's balance sheet always smashes that like button right now to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. Yeah, Oroco's balance sheet was not terrible, but their cash was behind. It was underneath their current liabilities. So I mean, the balance sheet doesn't look awful, but any kind of an upside down balance sheet in a credit contraction cycle is a little bit questionable. And I was looking at the news and the blogs, and they are hyping copper, like copper's the coolest thing ever in history, and now they're putting things up like copper is antiviral and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, like, this is a little ridiculous. They have a picture of of a bathroom that's completely plated in copper, like the whole tub and the walls and everything is all copper. Why aren't people covering all their surfaces in copper? Because it's antiviral, antibacterial, and stuff like that. Um, so, I mean, obviously the main use of copper copper is not a medical use. It's industrial, and industry's down. So I guess I'll talk about the cycles, right? So we're in a credit contraction down cycle right now, which means the monetary expansion is down and growth is down. And there is one sector that's very good for copper, and that if you watch Hedgeye, they talk about the quads, and what we're in now is quad 4, which is the monetary expansion decreasing and growth decreasing, and that's not really good for anything except gold in the mineral sector. But copper really does well in quad 1, which means that it's a contraction down, but growth is expanding, and we're not going to see those conditions probably for the rest of this year. Because right now it looks like we're going from a quad 4 contraction to a quad 2 growth expansion, then probably to a quad 3 sort of expansion down growth phase. And that's kind of the outlook for the rest of this year. So I don't like copper this year at all, fundamentally, cyclically. And then miners is an extra level of just risk. I mean, the mining companies in general are just sort of a bad business model. Like the more business they do, the less of their resource they have. They're like mining themselves out of business, and then they have to go do exploration. And this is largely an exploration company. That's all risky. I do like the jurisdictions here, though. The jurisdictions are really good. If you look at the dollar swap lines and which countries have the most political risk, this is a Canadian company with mining jurisdiction in Mexico, and those are two of the best dollar swap line countries as far as countries that'll be able to get the dollars they need to service their loans and not get in political risk. Because if you get over in some of the smaller jurisdictions where they're mining in Asia, those countries that don't have good swap lines can get in trouble paying their dollar debts. And there's countries like Papua New Guinea, I guess, just threatened to nationalize some of the mines in their country. And countries are going to be when they're crashing, when their currency's crashing, countries are going to be doing stuff like that, like nationalizing mines that are owned by foreign corporations, and it's a whole another layer of risk on these mining companies. You have to pay attention to the jurisdictions and the new structure of the monetary system, the dollar swap lines, and kind of figure out if you look up Marin Katusa, he talks all about swap lines and commodity jurisdictions, and he loves Mexico for a jurisdiction. It's stable and has a good long-term outlook as far as GDP relative to the rest of the world. Really good dollar swap lines for debt, and so Mexico is a really really good mining jurisdiction, and he likes America for a mining jurisdiction because all the miners have been focusing overseas, and this kind of reversal in the monetary system is going to make America look more attractive soon. So yeah, so copper I don't like. I just don't like copper this year, like the whole year. And miners is extra risk on top of copper. I guess that's the general outlook. This is not investment advice. Please hit the like button. And Oroco Resource Group. Um, this I don't even know what to say about this crazy move here. This is out of whack with the cycle, and has nothing to do with the cycle. And this is a tiny, risky stock that's trading less than $1. And ooh man, I don't know. This is just gambling to me. This looks like gambling, and it could make crazy swings outside of the cycle, and it could go either way. So um, good luck if you're interested in Oroco, and happy trading.